2020 was a tough year, and part of what made it even tougher was burnout from work. Longer hours, Zoom fatigue, and to top it all off, people just weren't taking vacation as much as they normally would because they just thought, hey, I can't travel, I can't do anything. I'm just gonna save up my vacation days for next year when this is all over. But then the problem is they don't take vacation, they don't recharge, the burnout continues, and then it's just a vicious cycle that keeps going on and on. But now it's 2021 and we have vaccines coming and the promises of getting back to normal. But until that time comes, and no one really knows when it's gonna come, we might still be in this for a bit. So this video is for anyone who wants to take a vacation during the first part of 2021, but can't travel or would prefer not to. In this video, I'll talk about a 2-week staycation that I just now took over the Christmas and New Year holiday, in which I would say was easily one of the better vacations that I've taken, even compared to some of the ones where I actually traveled and went around. And I'll give you 3 different tips for planning your own great staycation in 2021 or beyond. With that, let's dive right in. To start off, I think it's useful to ask yourself one simple question. What is the point of vacation anyway? I think some common answers include just escaping from work, just relaxing, exploring someplace new. No matter what it is, I think it's really useful to just clarify that answer for yourself, because once you have clarity on that, it'll make it easier to say, okay, I have a staycation coming up. How can I plan that staycation to get what I would normally want to get out of a vacation? For me, vacations have normally been a mental break from work, a time to relax. But lately, in the last couple of years, it's also become a chance for me to be active and a chance to explore and a chance to do new things. One good example is I went on vacation to Hawaii at the end of 2019 for New Year's. And I was tempted to just lay on the beach all day, but then I realized, hey, I'm not actually happy with doing that. And so I did a lot of hiking, I did a lot of exploring, and that ended up being one of the most fun vacations I've ever taken. So for me this time around, end of 2020, I definitely wanted some element of relaxation, disconnecting from work. I also wanted some element of exploration. And luckily for me, I live in the Bay Area, and despite having been here for 7 years, there were still a lot of places that I just had never visited before. But I also thought to myself, a staycation is a unique opportunity to do some things that are actually harder to do in a traditional vacation where you've gone and traveled somewhere. For me, one of these things was just clearing out a lot of lingering tasks that had piled up on my to-do list over 2020, such as a bunch of partially read books and articles that I had just kind of let fall by the wayside. And then a final thing that I really wanted to get out of this staycation was some learning, in particular around film. I had just bought a new GoPro, I had bought a new camera stabilizer, and this is the perfect opportunity to learn how to use them, which will hopefully just make my videos even better going forward. Now, the next step is to design and plan out your staycation in a little more detail. At this point, some people are probably watching this video and saying, yes, it totally makes sense. I should definitely plan out a staycation. Others are probably thinking, wow, why would you ever plan out a staycation? You're just at home. There's no reason to plan it. That just seems really weird. If you're in that second camp, hear me out, because for several reasons, I think it's actually more important to plan a staycation than a traditional vacation. First, it makes your staycation to something that's actually real. The fact that I actually took the time to think about it, plan it out, made it a real thing in my head that definitely felt separate from just the normal humdrum of everyday life. Second, planning is actually half the fun. I actually got a lot of enjoyment in the couple weeks leading up to this staycation. I had made a list of all the things I was gonna do, and I was talking to people about it, and I was getting people's advice on where I should go visit and what movies I should watch and things like that. There are tons of psychologists that say that anticipation of events is one of the things that actually makes for the most enjoyment. And for me, that's definitely one of the things that I experienced. And third, if you don't actually plan or think about it somewhat, there is a good chance that your staycation will just evolve into kind of a long stretch of nothingness and boredom and laziness where you basically don't do anything. When you're on an actual vacation where you've traveled somewhere, you've spent a bunch of money, this is less of a risk because you feel like, hey, I've done all this work, I'm here. This is limited time, I've spent a lot of money, I want to get the most out of it. Those things don't really exist with a staycation, so you have to create those things for yourself. So then for me, as I was designing and planning out my staycation, there were a few different elements. First, along kind of the theme of exploration, I made a list of all the different places that I wanted to visit in the Bay Area, mostly places that I had never visited before. And I also combined this with my goal of learning to use some of my new film equipment. So I brought my GoPro and my camera stabilizer and was filming the whole thing, which was great. And then one thing I did was I actually decided to kind of lock myself into a couple of these things in advance. For instance, I went to Muir Woods, which was a lot of fun, but I had to buy a parking ticket. And then I also wanted to go across the Golden Gate Bridge on a bike, which I had never done before. And I didn't have a bike, so I needed to rent a bike, which was like $85. And I went ahead and just paid for those things in advance, which just made it more likely that I was actually gonna do those things when the day came. One of the things that I really wanted to do was watch a bunch of movies. And so I just made a list of movies and I watched one almost every single night. And then aside from that, I finished a bunch of books and articles. I installed a new car radio in my 13-year-old car. Even some smaller things that seem silly but had been on my to-do list for a long time, such as fixing the buttons on my shirts. And now I'm gonna get my phone out because I want to tell you what I actually did. So in total, I ended up visiting 10 different places in the Bay Area. A couple of my favorites were Twin Peaks, which is actually right in the middle of the city, but I had somehow never been there in 7 years. And then also Mount Diablo, which was beautiful. You could get a great view of the city, nice long hike. And then I ended up watching 11 new movies. Probably the favorite one I watched was Sound of Metal. Highly recommend it. I think it deserves an Oscar. And then another one I'll call out was Tenet, which I had wanted to see all year long. And I finally got a chance to see it. And I actually had to see it twice because the first time it was very confusing. And then I also finished 3 different books that I had started throughout 2020 and had only partially read. And so those are some of the things I did. And again, I don't think I would have done nearly as many if I hadn't planned it out at least somewhat at the beginning. My final tip, like with a normal vacation, I would actually recommend that you capture and share it. For me, I just shared what I was doing every day on Instagram stories, and then I was taking a bunch of pictures and video that I can look back on. First, like with the planning and designing that I just talked about, it made the staycation feel more like a real thing. Like it was a real thing worth capturing and sharing in the first place. Second, it was fun to actually just post and talk to different people who replied to my Instagram stories about the places I was going and the movies I was watching and whether they agreed with whether a movie was good or bad or not. It just made the whole thing a lot more fun than it would have been otherwise. And finally, since I have it captured, this is a great memory that I can continue to go back to in the future. One writer that I came across that writes about happiness, she says that there are 4 parts to enjoying a happy event. The first is anticipation or looking forward to it. The second is savoring it or enjoying it in the moment. The third is expression or sharing things with others to heighten the experience. And the fourth is reflection or looking back on those happy times. I think a lot of these elements are things that definitely make experiences happier for me. And they're also a good summation of what I think you can get out of a staycation if you do it right. I hope this video will help you have some great vacation time before this pandemic is over so you can be recharged and then get back at it. And I think it's even something that you can do after the pandemic. A lot of my vacations before the pandemic had been staycations, which were often very, very enjoyable. If you like this video, please hit the like button, which will help make sure that others can find it. Share it with a friend if you think they'll find it useful. If you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and click on the notifications so that you can make sure that you won't miss a single one. And then finally, I'd love to hear if you've taken any good staycations, if you have any good tips for how to do it. And so if you do, leave a comment below. All right, that'll do it for this video. Peace.